Bookcase TV is brought to you in part by Resident Magazine.
This week on Bookcase TV, we take a close look at women. How close? We try to understand motherhood, what it means to be a good mother, what it's like to become a mother. You will hear how they define the perfect family in today's world. Are the answers as black and white as they seem? Do you think the motherhood was one of those milestones you had to do?
Interesting. Well, the writing came first. Writing was the first time I was not risk averse in my decision making. When I decided to leave a very good job to take the plunge at writing where there was no security that I would even get published, it was so good for me. And I experienced for the first time the idea that if you open yourself up to risk and opportunities that you never would have otherwise experienced become open to you. And so as a single mother who went the route of a donor to have my son, somewhat against societal conventions, certainly a very scary step as a person to take, not just to embrace motherhood by myself, but to relinquish my expectation of the traditional that most of us grow up thinking we'll get married, we'll have kids. There's an order of things.
And there's a great quote in your book about selling the dream of a perfect family.
Right. And I just changed up the order. And I probably needed to have done that once before to have the courage to do it in motherhood.
So what was like before when you were a lawyer? I mean, it's a very interesting trajectory. Most often people start as writer and then they become like most established career because they can make a living, but you did the flip side of that.
I think that being a lawyer is not a bad job. It gets a really bad rap. For me, I think there's two kinds of ways to work. You either work as a means to an end to support yourself in the lifestyle that you want. And I thought that was me, that I just was working to make money to have really nice vacations. Or you work because you are so committed and inspired by your work. And what I figured out about myself is that I'm actually that second type as opposed to the first. And I was just not stimulated creatively as a lawyer enough. I just literally woke up one day and thought, I think today I'd like to write a novel. So I took a sabbatical, drove to California to live on the beach and write my first novel, and discovered that sabbaticals really agree with me. With the first book, and I still think today, I work harder and I work longer hours as a writer, but I love it so much.
You were talking about your mother
Yes.
early on. How influential was she in your decision? Because she's written many books.
She has written many books. I wouldn't say she was influential in my individual decision personally in the career change, because in my mind I was always going to be a writer someday. I just realized, what was I waiting for? What my mom did for me is show me that as another second career writer, that it was very possible to break into this very difficult, very saturated industry, and if you take a risk that it could pay off. So she just gave me the confidence, I think, to sort of go boldly forth with what I always wanted to do, and frankly, a couple of connections.
The book is a reflection pretty much of your life. We could call it a memoir, or?
Oh no, definitely not a memoir. I think the ability for me to convincingly write the point of view of someone else, because I really feel it, is an innate gift that makes writing a very comfortable place for me. So when I write about a single man in his late 40s who's trying to adopt a child on his own, I really feel what he's going through. Now, a lot of that does become instructed by my own experience, but I wouldn't say that it's anything I've written as a memoir. I like to take too much license.
So what about Dimple? Because there's mention that it could be mostly the reflection of you.
She most closely tracked my personal experience. She's a very content woman who just doesn't have a relationship and approaches 40 and wants a child. And for her, it's an issue of career versus family, and also that very scary catch-22 of choosing between waiting for the right person, how long do you wait, and if you wait too long, do you lose your ability to have children naturally?
Being in New York, I met a lot of single women, big career, the powerhouses, I call them. and they made that choice, and then they reach late 30s, early 40s, and they're looking for around and for Mr. Right, and they said, like, painful choice.
It is a hard
What do
choice.
you do? Do you settle with someone you don't quite like, but you have a baby, or you just wait for Mr. Right?
Everyone's got a different perspective.
And that's Dimple's dilemma.
Dimple's dilemma. Maybe I should have called it that. That's a good title. I started out from Dimple's position, but I was pregnant during most of writing this book. So I actually really felt that I identified with Wyatt because he was about to adopt and suddenly about to be a parent, and all the terrors that go along with accumulating the stuff, and you know, the will you be a good parent, and are you doing everything right? I worked very hard to capture that stark emotional absence that was driving Dimple, that she just wanted this so badly, and for her it was just such a bigger roadmap to get there in terms of courage, but also just the science and the money necessary to have a child on your own. What I do think is universal is that there is no one right way to parent. I don't ever in any of my writing want to suggest that my point of view is the point of view. What I like to do is present several different storylines to try to expose people to the fact that there are lots of points of view. Families don't look like they used to with Beaver Cleaver and the white picket fence. They look really different. And as a mother to a son in an alternative family, my fondest hope is that he grows up in a culture where we've loosened some of the judgments as to whether or not there is a best family structure.
So now you've written 3 novels.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back at 3 of them, do you see recurring themes?
I tend to write from the primary point of view of women, and while I think the themes are universal, I generally write about people who are out of step with societal expectations. So in my first book, my main character, V, was someone who ultimately just didn't think that marriage was the right answer for her for a sustained long-term relationship. You know, she really starts out very enamored of the Mary tale of the big white dress, and then as she sees all of her friends making various choices just to be married, she starts to wonder if it isn't a little bit of fool's gold. You could say that Best Day of Someone Else's Life, my first, is about the societally sold image of hitting a certain age and becoming married. The second one is about the career paths that we should all be taking between education and career. My character in that one, Maeve Connolly, she's just a little out of step with where she's supposed to be.
But these are all choices.
Right.
They rely on reason and will. But motherhood, for you, I feel like from reading your book, all these characters, they all have something very similar at the core.
Right.
They're all driven. They all have that drive to be parents.
Or not to be parents.
Or to be parents. But do you think it's something beyond our control and it has to happen? It's not like I'm becoming a lawyer or a writer. It's something biological.
Well,
it has nothing to do with will and reason.
I think that in the book, each of the characters, again, shares that idea that they feel a little unnatural, societally deviant, because they either, in one case, one of my characters just doesn't want children, and the difficulties that she encounters trying to have a relationship.
You mentioned you were pregnant during the writing of this book. Do you feel you have the same voice inside you?
Oh no, I'm far more ADD, first of all, because my son comes in and wants my attention and I always stop for him. No, I think my voice is different. I am such a more content person. Maybe I've lost a little edge because I do love my life. Empathy is such an important part of being a writer, and really trying to think of stories that are going to be interesting to people but tell them something that is familiar at the same time. Being a parent, just like you said, it plumbs a depth of emotional existence that I didn't have before, and so I think it can only make me a more talented writer, if a slightly more distracted one.
Do you find yourself as a moralist?
I consider myself a satirist more than I consider myself a moralist, but what I'm engaging in satirically is questions of morality, which is, what kind of obligation should you have to your community? Does it matter whether you're a good person, whether you're kind to other people? What is the price you pay for turning your back on your spouse? My work is also unusual in that people really engage with it like it's nonfiction, even though it's fiction. In other words, kind of a complicated dreamscape novel. In my world, it's just been a constant question in my work for almost 15 years now is, how much is true? Usually one character appears to be the author in a multi-character work.
So which one will it be in this
The
book?
one that people assume is me is Rebecca. And also people who know me know that I'm a little cynical, and her character represents the most questioning attitude about motherhood. The parts of the book that I'm proudest of are the parts where myself emerged in a character that I initially didn't feel much of a connection to. And then I realized, oh, I'm in this character too. I'm in the gay dad. I'm in the Broadway actress. These are experiences that are completely far from my own life, and yet they have sentiments that I relate to.
Let me ask you about Prospect Park West. I haven't read it, but
Okay.
how different was Rebecca Rose?
And in that novel, she wanted action. She felt inert.
What sort of action?
Well, she wanted an affair.
No,
She wanted,
okay.
she wanted, yeah. The character that grows the most, if you look at the two novels as one
arc.
piece, is Karen, because she begins Prospect Park West as the most real estate obsessed, status obsessed, very focused on having 2 children, married to a white shoe lawyer who makes a lot of money, who she didn't marry for sexual excitement, but married for sort of safety and security. In this novel, everything is taken away from her. She's separated. She's realized, in part due to her separation, and in part because she's not sure what's going on biologically, she may never have a second child. She moved to an area for its school zone, this very homogenous, upper middle class white zone. And then I invented this fictitious plot in which her street is rezoned, and she has to send her son to a very different kind of school.
Okay. Let's talk about sex.
Okay, yes,
In,
my favorite subject.
In Motherland.
In fiction and in life.
The place of default of your characters seems always to be the sex.
Yeah.
When they have life situations. Among all the choices we have in life, where is that the place they go back to?
Well, I've always been interested in just writing about romance. So, I don't really start from a place of thinking about sex. I think what kind of person would be intriguing for this character to meet. When you point it out to me like that, and I'm going through the characters, I'm going, yes, affair.
Yeah.
I realize that there's a lot of sex in the book, although not all of it is adulterous. I wanted to write about midlife crisis, and I live in a neighborhood in which sex is rarely talked about. People are incredibly private. It's rarely even joked about,
Sure.
which may be a sign.
No, but it's a good point.
Maybe
because,
a sign that nobody's having it. So I may have
maybe that.
gone into overdrive in writing the book in terms of coming up with all these sort of sexual plots. I wanted to write characters who really miss sex, and maybe they don't want to have sex with their spouse anymore, but they still want to have it. And so I wanted to kind of send them on perhaps 1970s style adulterous relationships as a way of entertaining myself and, entertaining the reader.
The bigger question is relationship and sex. What are we hiding behind that? So you talk about conformity. What's being left out?
Well, so much of this book is about Generation X parents. My generation of roughly mid-30s to early 50s parents. I have observed a return to 1950s values. Propriety, the elevation of the family, incredible domesticity, and just from what I've picked up on, couples not prioritizing each other.
As a satirist, and I
Yeah.
often heard that to be a good comedian or a good satirist, you have to be an angry person.
There's a kind of status obsession in the upper ranks of, New York City parents that's disturbing to me. It sort of defies the way that I was raised. It certainly defies the way that my husband and I are trying to raise our child, and yet it's something I just see a lot of people getting sucked into, whether it's where you, for example, we just started school. So where'd you go? I saw a friend of mine on the playground, and her son's hair had gotten very blonde. And I said, without thinking, his hair's so blonde, where did you go this summer? And she said, "The streets of Brooklyn."
There you go.
And it was a really refreshing moment because I realized that I'm as guilty of that as anyone else.
Yeah.
And I knew that she works full time and her husband works full time. You know, really what it was it's someone that I don't know particularly well. So I was looking for a way to connect. So I immediately defaulted to the most materialistic conversation we could have, which is, where did you go on vacation?
That's why I call that the 100-calorie conversation. You know, around the bump.
That's what sucks about being a parent.
Yeah.
Is it's like
But is it
90% of the conversations are the 100-calorie conversation. When you think about the 20-somethings and 30-somethings who created incredible change in art and culture, these people moved to New York City to get away from their parents. And everything they were about was kind of a rejection of where they came from. And that is not the world of, for example, downtown New York today. It's the world of downtown New York today is trust funds and apartment buildings where nobody's earning the money that's paying their own rent.
Right, yeah.
Or you have 8 roommates, which, you know, well, at least it's honest. Because at least in the apartments where they have the 8 roommates, they are paying their share.
Always wanted to be a writer? Or always had it
I
naturally?
wanted to be a writer since I was about 20. So I had a lot of boyfriends who wanted to be novelists.
Okay.
And they were all writing these novels in notebooks. I remember saying to this one guy, "Oh, all you have to do to write a novel is just start writing it?"
That's right.
And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm writing a novel." My work was these dating experiences I was having and trying to make sense of them. And then I went to Brown University and I started performing these pieces at a performance space in Providence. They were written to be read aloud, very conversational, you know, no long descriptions of the setting of the sun behind the trees. You know, I really wanted it to feel like they were just conversations I was having with people in bars. And that's really how I started to develop my voice. I have found the social aspects of parenthood to be very challenging because when I was single, my friends were very bohemian and kind of striving and really believed in art. And then when you have a kid, you realize most people who have children are like almost from another segment of society, which is just about keeping their children safe, and they're not necessarily artists and thinkers and writers. And of course, I have friends who are parents and do creative things, but it's hard to find them. As an artist, you're inherently nonconformist, and then when you enter the world of parenthood, you're living in Leave It to Beaver land.
Motherhood seems to be a place where you disappear. Why can't it be both? Where you have, this is what motherhood is, and you can still be yourself.
Some of that has to do with my, you know, unique psyche, which is wanting to be liked, which is a very old thing. The mother in me wants to not rock the boat, and the author in me feels it's my obligation to rock the boat.
Women are rediscovering passion. Things have been heating up on the romance front. I used to go to the gym, had the perfect body, had long blonde curls. I wonder if you need an action figure to get some action. Our correspondent went out in the field to see how hot things have become. Artie, where it was back then, is in a different place where it is today?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What was the main difference?
It was more about romance. Now it's about almost all genre fiction.
When you say genre fiction, we're talking about sci-fi?
Mysteries, thrillers, romantic suspense, paranormal. Inspirational, big market in inspirational.
How does that work once you get 250 books a month? Obviously you don't read them all.
No. We have a team of over 50 reviewers. Our reviewers are fans. They are avid fans. These women would read 30 books a month even if we didn't pay them or have them review for us. That's our main job, outside of writing articles, interviewing authors.
What's happening now with the e-books?
We are trying to get a grip on that, just like everybody else. So we review, I'd say, percentage-wise, maybe 15% of our reviews are ebooks. A lot of the big 6 and a lot of authors self-publish ebooks, and we send those out too. So, and we don't know how we're going to, because it just keeps growing, you know, and I'm not sure how we're going to handle it, because we have all the print books still, lots of print books, but also now ebooks. But we're getting a digital magazine together.
So it's the future of RT, obviously. It's the online business,
Digital,
the presence.
Yeah, our website, yeah, our blog, but we're still print.
I handle mostly the big 6 publishers, and then Giselle is our small press coordinator. I know that we review between about 250 and 300 books an issue on average.
We cover all kinds of territory in our feature articles, whether it's interviewing our cover people like Julianne Walker or Brenda Novak, who's on the cover of our November issue. We do that. We handle, trends in romance.
And you come up with all the topics, or you're pretty much predicted by the market?
We look at the market. We see what's happening in the media, obviously. What women are talking about on social media and what the news, the mainstream media thinks is interesting.
Now, in terms of some sort of explosion that seems to be happening in a romance novel, why would that happen now, you think?
Well, I think right now what we're seeing is the huge explosion of erotica and erotic romance, thanks to the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon. People who've never picked up an erotic novel in their lives are coming to the industry. So we like to switch things up. We like to keep things eclectic so that we're not just serving one portion of our reading audience. We like to serve everyone and make sure everyone gets what they need.
Sure. All right. Please, like always. Our correspondent, Frederic Colier, reporting from Brooklyn. That's all from BCTV World. Remember, reading blows your mind. Let's see what we've got this week for the pick of the week. The first book is Jessica Grove's Sad Desk Salad. First time I opened the book, I thought I was reading a different language. It's this perfect book for the cubicle chain workers, computer addicted personality. The book is written with all these text messages, instant messages, Twitter. When I was first starting reading it, I had a very tough time actually getting into the novel. But the novel just settled because it's a great story. It's about a young woman who spent her day talking about nonsense and triviality of life through her blog and the company she works for. She comes across a scoop of a life that could make or break her career. She has to decide what she's going to do, whether she's going to break this famous personality's career or decide to keep it to herself, which will also impact her. So it's a great dilemma, and if you want to know exactly what the dilemma is, you're going to have to read the novel. Jessica Grove's Sad Desk Salad. Guarantee 100% protein-free conversation. So let's see what we've got for the pick of the week. Oh yes, a great book, Elisa Montanti, I Will Stand By You. Now, when I received this book, I was extremely reluctant to open it, just because of its subjects about children and the consequence of war on children. The book itself is a tremendous journey of a woman, a journey of inspiration, something that some of us should emulate, supposed to remain passive behind our televisions. Elisa Montanti, after fighting months of depression following her mother's death, took a trip to Bosnia, shortly after the war, where she discovered there were quite a few children with amputated limb and just left to their own devices and no help whatsoever. The journey of self-discovery for her was to reclaim herself, and she achieved that through creating this global relief front, where she helped, along with some volunteer doctor and hospital, to repatriate these wounded children and help them to regain life with a prosthetic limb. So the book is actually heart-wrenching, and she goes through the whole journey describing her life and how she created this mission. So a tremendous book of inspiration, I Will Stand By You by Elisa Montanti.
Rolling on.
Oh yes, a great fast read, Jennifer Weiner, The Next Big Thing. Now, we love Jennifer Weiner and Bookcase because of the story. They are engaging, and also the message she put for young women, which is not just about getting married and having a fairy tale, but actually have a life and a journey for yourself and be inspired to other women. Jennifer does that very well, and this is why we love her. Following all the others, it's a story of Ruth, who decided to move to Hollywood. She has the dream of becoming a creative writer, and the next big thing is a sitcom. And Jennifer, because she's sophisticated, engaging, and witty and intelligent, managed to have it done on television. So the next big things start to happen, but quickly Ruth learned the hardship of reality. The writing is always snappy, which is a trademark of Jennifer Weiner's. If you want to know the end of the novel, whether the next big thing happened or not, you're going to have to read it. My take is the next big thing is going to be me. So let's talk about sex now.
Okay.
Let's talk about sex.
Okay. Yes. My favorite subject.
In Motherland. Holy shit. You can't talk about sex, is it? You have someone on your side.